Summary of Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. There is an introduction by an anonymous editor who says that the story of a man's amazing experiences is true, fun, and helpful for the reader. Robinson Crusoe starts the story by talking about his early life in York, England. Robinson really wanted to go out to sea, but both of his parents told him not to. They tried to convince him to stay home and live a nice life. Robinson left home and took a ship to London without telling his parents, even though they told him not to. The ship ran into a terrible storm on its way to London and sank. Robinson and the other crew members were lucky enough to be saved by another boat. After getting off the ship, Robinson was told by the shipmaster to go back home. But he felt driven to keep traveling, so he took the train to London. He then got on a ship that was going to the coast of Africa. Robinson says this was his only successful trip. He got back to London safely and with some money from trade. Robinson got on the ship to go on the same trip again with a new captain even though the old captain's wife had died. He left his money with her. His ship was sunk by pirates on this trip, and he was taken as a slave to the Moorish port of Salé. He finally got away after 2 years when he went out on a fishing trip with a Moor named Ismail and a young boy named Zuri. Robinson threw Ismail overboard and set sail with Zuri out to sea. They went south along the coast of Africa in the hopes of meeting a European trade ship. Some people from Africa meet them on the shore and give them food and water. One last ship finds Robinson and Zuri. It's a Portuguese ship, and the captain will take Robinson to Brazil for free. Robinson sold his small boat to the kind captain, who then took him safely to Brazil, where he bought land and started a sugar farm. Robinson gave Zuri to the captain to work for him. As things went well on Robinson's farm, he got too ambitious and went to Africa with other plantation owners to bring back slaves. When the ship ran into a storm, the captain wanted to turn around, but Robinson told him to keep going. After that, there was another harsh storm and the ship sank. Robinson tried to get away on a small boat, but he was thrown into the water and only survived the shipwreck. He washed up on the shore of an unknown island. Robinson saw the wrecked ship the next day. Luckily, it was stuck close to land. It was possible for him to swim over to it, get on board, and get food, water, and other useful things. He made a raft out of sticks and brought these things back to land. After several trips to the ship, there was a storm that blew away what was left of it. He put up his tent on a flat area next to a cliff and built a fence around it. He kept adding on to and improving this house. To keep track of time, he built a big wooden cross to mark the days. Robinson kept making his house better by building a big wall of grass around it as he got better at making and using tools. There were both good and bad things about his life on the island that he wrote down in a book. One day, Robinson dumped out some grain husks. Soon after, stalks of rice and barley began to grow from them, which shocked him. He thought this was a gift from God, even though Robinson's cave home was badly damaged by an earthquake on the island one day. Soon after that, Robinson got really sick. In his fever dream, a man came down from the sky and told him, "Since all of this has not made you change your mind, you will now die." Robinson realized all of a sudden that he had not been religious. He said prayers to God and then began reading the Bible that he had brought with him from his ship. Robinson got better after being sick and realized how important Christianity is all over again. He thought he was stuck on the island forever, so he looked around more and found a forest area with many fruit trees. That's where he built a smaller house next to his main one. Robinson went without food and prayed to God on the date of his arrival on the island 1 year ago. After that, he planted barley and rice and picked grapes in the bush to dry and make raisins. Robinson walked to the other side of the island one day and saw land across the water in the distance. Robinson worked very hard and eventually learned how to gather his grains, make bread, and build things out of clay. Robinson's life on the island got better after these changes were made. It became clear to him that life on the island was better than life in the city because he had no reason to be lustful, proud, greedy, or covetous. and he thanked God for how his life had turned out. He even thought that this new life was better than living with other people. Robinson put together a boat so that he could sail around his island. But a strong wind almost pushed him out to sea, where it would have been dangerous. He chose not to go out on the water again after coming back to shore. To save time and money on hunting goats, Robinson caught some, trained them, and built a pen with a fence around it for them. Robinson was scared and shocked when he saw a man's footprint in the sand on the shore of his island. He ran away and hid in his house, which he called his castle, because he thought the footprint must have been from a wild animal. Robinson didn't see any other people on the island though, so he went back to his normal life and built more defenses around his home. Robinson was looking for a place to build a new goat pen when he came across piles of human remains on the shore near a fire pit. These were the remains of a group of people who had been eating each other. Robinson was so disgusted that he thought he should wait for the cannibals to come to the island again and rescue their victims. He then thought about whether he should let them live their own lives according to their own cultural norms. He came to the conclusion that he had no right to kill wild people who had done him no harm. Robinson started to be much more careful around the island because he didn't want to run into any wild people. Robinson was happy to spend the rest of his life on his island after 23 years there. Soon after, there was a big storm, and Robinson heard gunshots coming from a ship that was in trouble. The next day, he saw a shipwrecked on some rocks not far from the shore. He hoped that a few sailors had made it to his island safely, but none of them had. He rowed his boat out to the ship and got on board. There were some goods on board, as well as 2 sailors who had drowned. Robinson thought more and more about leaving his island after this show. That night, he had a dream that a wild animal that was being held captive by cannibals fled and ran away with him, becoming his servant. When Robinson woke up, he realized he had been dreaming. He was excited that someone might be able to help him find land. But after about a year and a half, Robinson saw a group of cannibals. One of their prisoners got away and ran toward Robinson's house. Robinson saved the prisoner by killing the cannibals who were after him. The prisoner was so thankful that he promised Robinson that he would always work for him. He taught him English and told him about Christianity and gave him the name Friday. Robinson learned from Friday that his home country was a boat ride away from the island and that there were Spanish people living beyond it. Friday told Robinson that a boat full of Europeans had come to his home country and were now living with his people. They looked like they might be people who had been on the ship that sank near Robinson's island. Robinson suggested that the 2 of them build a boat so that Friday could return to his land, but Friday wouldn't go without Robinson. When a group of cannibals showed up on the island, Robinson finally decided to go with Friday. However, the plans were put on hold. Robinson saw that they were holding a European prisoner, so he and Friday set up a trap for them. They killed the natives and freed the prisoner. They found another prisoner in one of the savages' boats. It turned out to be Friday's father. The Spanish prisoner next to Robinson told him that his ship had sunk in a storm and that he and some other soldiers were stuck in Friday's home country. Robinson sent Friday's father and the Spanish prisoner back on a boat to get the rest of the Spanish soldiers so that they could escape with Robinson on a ship. Before they could go back, though, an English ship stopped by. 3 prisoners were brought ashore by some of the ship's soldiers. Robinson freed the prisoners, and the English ship's captain was one of them. Robinson was on board when there was a mutiny, and the captain told him that the rebels were going to leave him on this island to die. 2 of the rebels were killed by Robinson, the captain, and the other prisoners who were rescued. The others were forced to swear loyalty to the captain again. Later, more of the rebels came ashore. Robinson and his friends caught them and told them they had to give up. After that, the captain and his men went back to the ship and took it back for Robinson. He finally left his island on the English ship, leaving some rebels behind on the island. He finally got back to England with Friday after a long trip. He had been away for 35 years. It made Robinson feel like a stranger to everyone else. Now that both of his parents had died, the only people left in his family were 2 sisters and 2 sons. Robinson went to Lisbon to find out what was going on with his farm in Brazil. Robinson was saved by an old Portuguese captain who met him in Lisbon and told him that his farm was doing well. He also helped him send word to Brazil so that his fortune could be sent back to England, even though Robinson had wanted to go to Brazil himself. Robinson started getting packages of money, sugar, gold, and tobacco, and he soon became very rich. He was grateful for his good luck, but he also felt like he had more care upon my head than when he was on his island. He chose to go back to England, but he didn't want to take the boat, so he joined a group of people on a trip by land to Paris. From there, he would take a short boat ride to England. Before going, he made plans for a big chunk of his money to be given to the faithful wife of the Portuguese captain who had been taking care of his money in England while he was away. Robinson's visitors hired a guide to help them cross the Pyrenees, which are the mountains that separate Spain and France. However, the guide led them along a dangerous path with lots of wolves. Hundreds of wolves circled the group, and they barely made it out alive by firing their guns at the wild animals. Robinson arrived in France safely and had a smooth trip to England from there. His 2 nephews, one of whom became a sailor, were taken care of by him when he got back to England. Robinson wanted to go back to the sea, but he got married in England instead. But after his wife died, he went to the East Indies with his nephew on a trade ship. Robinson went back to his island, where the Spanish had set up a settlement and fought off many attacks from native people in the Caribbean on this trip. He then went to Brazil. The author tells the reader that he will write more about these events in the future.
About the author. Daniel Defoe was born in London in 1660 into a lower middle-class Presbyterian family. During this historical period, England was not a very accepting environment for non-Anglican Protestants. For example, Defoe was not permitted to attend Cambridge or Oxford University due to his religious beliefs. He was a merchant for a while and went all over Europe. In the 1680s and 1690s, he wrote political pamphlets that made him famous. He was jailed in the early 1700s for some of the more controversial political works he had done. After a while, Defoe started writing fiction. Robinson Crusoe came out in 1719, and he followed it up with a number of other books, including Moll Flanders. Defoe's realistic books were influential in the growth of the novel as a literary form and were very popular among England's new middle-class readers. Defoe died in London on April 24, 1731.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.